welcome to Community Connection, your window to the world around you. Today we have a phenomenal individual with such a long history in such a short period of time. He is Senator David Knezek, representing the 5th Senate District, and we are honored to have him here today on Community Connection. Senator, welcome.
Thank you
so much for joining us.
Yeah, this is great.
You have had such a stellar career already at the ripe old age of 29. You just celebrated your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
What was your initial sense of politics is where I want to be and what I want to do?
Sure. So I think for a lot of folks, they talk about, what happens over the course of their lifetime and how it kind of all culminated in them wanting to run for office. And for me, it was one very particular circumstance at the University of Michigan Dearborn.
It's always that spark.
That caused me to run. And so I was a senior at the University of Michigan Dearborn, and I had attended a 2-day conference at the university about education and our corrections system here in Michigan. And I learned at that conference for the first time, we spend $36,000 per year per prisoner here in Michigan, and we spend on average about $7,000 per year on per students. And so I pulled the state representative aside at the end of that meeting, and I said, "You're a state representative. That is completely backwards. If we spent more money on our kids, we'd probably have less prisoners, in my opinion."
Right, and spend less money.
Right, and save a ton of money.
Common sense.
And so, yeah, common sense is not a common virtue in Lansing.
Common sense in Lansing, everyone.
Yeah. And she looked at me and she said, "Well, if you're so passionate about this, well, why don't you run for office?" And I kind of took some time and thought about it and spoke to some other folks, and actually ran for state representative when I was a senior in college. And so the timeline worked out great. I got elected in November of 2012. I graduated in December 2012 and took my oath of office in January 2013. So it was kind of a compressed timeline, but it all worked out. So happy to be here.
Absolutely. You're right, that timeline is phenomenal. So I guess you were destined to do this and to bring common sense to Lansing.
Sure.
So you also have a military background. You were in the U.S. Marines for a while, and you actually made it up to sergeant. Tell us about that experience. You actually went to Iraq too.
Yeah, so I joined the Marines back in 2006, and I was a sophomore in college at the time. And the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were, the topic of the day, all day, every day in class. And I think for me, my father was a police officer here in Dearborn Heights for 24 years. His father was in law enforcement. My mother's family were in the Army and the Navy in World War II. And so I think for me,
from that background, military background.
I think that it just kind of felt like, this is my generation's conflict, and I need to play my role, and I need to serve my part. And so I did it having not spoken with my parents first, to be forthright with you. I went into the recruiter's office. I went into the recruiter's office down on Carlisle and Telegraph, and I told the guy, I said, "I'm ready to go. Want to join the Marines." And he says, "Well, when do you want to leave?" I said, "Right now." He says, "Oh gosh." So
and
like a recruiter's dream.
I
haven't discussed anybody. And so signed the paperwork that day and left for boot camp 11 days later. And so my mother found out maybe 2 or 3 days after I signed the paperwork. And I give her every credit in the world, though. When I told her, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "I'm so proud of you, David." And so, God bless her. She was so supportive from the beginning, which is really all I needed to hear from my parents. And so went in 2006, 2007, 8, 9, and 10, was in Iraq, deployed as a member of a scout sniper platoon, both tours, and had just a phenomenal experience. It was, for me, so interesting having grown up in Dearborn Heights and having had exposure to cultures that are different than mine and faiths that are different than mine. There wasn't that culture shock when I went to the Middle East, and it was really difficult for a lot of the people that I was serving with. And so for me, it was a tremendous opportunity to educate folks on what is and what isn't, and what's true and what's false. to try and break down some of those barriers and to try and increase the understanding that we had between the military and the locals that we were dealing with in Iraq every day. So it was a tremendously rewarding experience. And like you said, I was fortunate enough to get up to sergeant. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And without a doubt, it's that time in the military that has helped, I think, sort of shape my approach to politics and my work ethic when it comes to politics. And so I really just tremendously fortunate to have had that opportunity. And then my sister followed suit. I went in 2006. She saw how much I was loving it. And in 2007, my sister joined the Marines as well. And she's a nurse now downtown. So we both done our time and got out and trying to do something with it.
Absolutely. It sounds like you were a real pivotal source to create those bridges when you were there. But explain to me what a platoon sniper, the battalion, and those whole 9 yards. I mean, what do you do? What is the actual daily kind of thing that you face?
Most of it is intelligence gathering and observation and tracking potential enemy activity, when you're in a given area. And so, the size and scope of a scout sniper platoon now is different from what it was back in, say, Vietnam, where it was a two-man team.
Absolutely.
Or in some of the most clandestine operations, a one-man team. We would go out in a 4 or 5 or 6-man team where you had 2 people that were carrying what we'd call the long rifles, the sniper rifles, a point man, a navigator, a radio man, and then because we were dealing in an urban combat situation, you would need to have some sort of suppressive fire with you. So a belt-fed weapon, if you will. We would call it a SAW, a squad automatic weapon. So we always had somebody that was carrying that SAW as well to try and make sure that we would have some cover and concealment if we got pinned down in any sort of situations. And so again, it's not what the movies want to make it out to be. It's 24 hours.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely.
It's 24 hours of silence, stillness, observation for maybe 1 minute of where something's happening or going down, and you need to really be on it. But for me, again, it gave us the opportunity to interact with locals in ways that other members of the military would have never had. And having had some level of familiarity with the Arabic language going into the Middle East was certainly helpful. Obviously, the dialect is different. Growing up in Dearborn Heights, I had more of a Lebanese dialect, whereas Iraqi a little throatier, a little different, right?
Yeah, the dialect.
And so the ability to not only interact with locals, in a sort of physical sense, I'm here, you're there, but to be able to communicate, verbally, really made the experience, so much better
and easier
for everybody.
And
it's about building trust. And my point to our platoon mates was, right, wrong, or indifferent, we're in their home, we're in their country, and we want the local Iraqis to buy into what it is the Americans are trying to do here, right? We don't want to have conflict with them. We should be trying to build coalitions and build partners as we try to move about with our mission here. And by building that trust and building those relationships, and I'll tell you the funniest thing, we had so many interpreters overseas working with the United States military as contractors for the government. So many of them were from the Dearborn Heights area. And so I remember very distinctly, we were in Fallujah. My very first duty station was in Fallujah.
You knew everybody.
and the guy and I are sitting there, we're in the middle of Iraq, we're in the middle of Fallujah, and we're talking about a restaurant at Schaefer and Warren, and so, or hey, can't wait to get back and have some shatila, something like that, and you're in the middle of
common, in a very uncommon place.
So it really is just, it's an emotional experience, and I don't say it's an emotional in like a weepy, teary thing, but it really is an emotional roller coaster. The ups and the downs, the goods and the bads, hearing from folks back home, not hearing from folks back home, and the reality that when you go over, maybe not everybody is coming back, and so you try to do your best to recommit yourself to their life and their safety and their family. And we were very blessed, very fortunate. My platoon, both tours, everybody went over, everybody came back.
Oh, that is a blessing.
So we were very, very blessed.
What a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge of being there is one thing, but the challenge of coming home is an entire new kind of platform.
Sure.
And I know that you've very recently introduced some legislation in
Sure.
regards to hiring our heroes, which is a phenomenal initiative, and also the service dogs.
Yeah.
I'm an animal lover, and I think being able to connect with a pet, especially a dog, they are so loyal. I think that speaks scores for the emotional stability of someone to know that you have somebody there or something there that's protecting you, or that's sort of a camaraderie kind of thing. Talk to us about that. I think that is so amazing.
No, and I'll touch briefly on just that reintegration piece first, because that is such a big piece of the puzzle that, frankly, we are doing a terrible job at right now.
Absolutely.
The federal government,
agree.
the state government, everybody's doing a terrible
and
job.
that really should be our focus right now.
And that's half the problem. The government doesn't want to admit when they're doing
Right.
something bad. We are really, really bad with reintegration.
Absolutely.
And I'll highlight for you how I know this personally. When I talk about how thankful we were that everybody we deployed with came back home, that's not the case anymore. I speak very openly, very honestly, because I think I have to get people to understand. Every Marine that I deployed with came back home from Iraq. It wasn't until we got home to the United States that the struggles became so much that they were not able to take it anymore. And so just from my platoon, we've had a number of men who have committed suicide since we came back home.
Yeah.
The
stresses and the challenges are enormous.
This is what happens. You spend 6 months getting ready for a deployment.
Sure.
You do the deployment, everything that comes along with it, the conflict, the war, the death, the chemicals,
conflict,
everything,
sure.
the inner conflict,
Physical,
absolutely.
emotional.
You come home and you spend 6 days decompressing, and then you're off into the real world, if you will. And that's a huge failure, and that's when people fall through the cracks, or they take paperwork and they go to ask the VA for help, and the VA turns them away. So they turn to the self-medication, the alcohol, the pills, the depression, and it leads to, ultimately, the suicide. And so for so many of us, the biggest challenge, I think, on the whole, and I went through this, my sister went through this, you come from the military where you have such a tremendous sense of purpose and a tremendous sense of self, and you're doing something to try and help others
And putting
to
your life
advance
on
their
the
lives.
line, too, as well.
Right, and you come home to the United States and you can't get a job.
It's flat.
I did 6 months when I came back from my first tour. 6 months I could not get a job. 4 interviews at the Family Video Store at Inkster and Ann Arbor Trail. Couldn't get a job, and they told me straight up, you're too fresh. You've just gotten back, we're kind of nervous, we don't know how you're gonna act. And so they didn't want to give me the job. I had 2 years of college.
I've never heard that before.
2 years of college, combat meritorious, promotion to corporal, tour in Iraq under my belt. I was 20-some years old. I couldn't get a job stocking videos at the video store. And so I lucked out.
Rather than being honored for your commitment and your service and saying, okay, for sure you will be the primary candidate, they're telling you
right, you're telling
that
you
we don't know what you're going to do.
And a lot of it is that misconception. It's
Sure.
the stigma that's attached to the returning service members. I lucked out. I got a job driving the Zamboni at Canfield and Redford Ice Arenas, so it all worked
That sounds
out.
like more fun.
It
anyway.
was. As a hockey player, it was great.
Yeah, family videos lost.
Right. So that reintegration piece is huge. The jobs piece is huge. And so the bill that you spoke about on the public sector side of things. So if you wanted to apply for a job with the city of Dearborn Heights, or a firefighter's job or a police officer's job, they have the ability to give you a veteran's preference. If you're going through the point system, maybe you get a 5-point bump or a 10-point bump if you serve in the military. That's been authorized and legal on the public sector side of things going back to the Civil War. The Civil War. Back in the 1800s, we've been able to do that. The private sector side doesn't have that ability, doesn't have that legal authority to do so. So I had introduced legislation.
Or mandate to
Right.
have to do it.
So I introduced legislation when I was in the House to say, if we've got private employers who want to work together to employ our veterans, to give them jobs, and it's not to say that they're going to get the job if they don't have the skills or the experience. You have to have the skills, you have to have the experience, you have to have the work ethic. But if it comes down to you and somebody else, if we want to help our veterans get employed, this authorizes our private employers to do it.
Sure.
And that bill was recently signed into law by Governor Snyder. And I'll tell you, it gave me goosebumps the first time, because you hear or you're doing all these things in Lansing, and you don't really know if people see it or know it or understand it. I was at a Veterans Day ceremony in Garden City. A guy comes up to me, he kind of slaps me on the arm. He says, "Are you Knezek?" I said, "Yeah, what's going on?" He says, "Man, I just got to come thank you." I said, what for? This is great, you know. He said, "I was the finalist for a job in the city of Farmington Hills. It was me and one other person, and they came to me and they said, yeah, we heard that there's this new bill that we can give you a preference to a veteran, so we're going to give you the job." He says, "I've been out of job for 6 to 9 months, had nothing, we were afraid we were going to lose our house, but now I'm back, I'm employed, we're making money, the family's okay." He says, "So I heard you," I'm getting goosebumps now.
Yeah, so am I.
He goes, "You know, I heard you're the guy, and so thanks."
That's wonderful.
And you know, if it helps that one guy,
Sure.
it's enough.
Sure.
You know,
and you know, because of your experience too, you know what it's like, and you've been
Right.
there, you've done that. You're not just, you know, speaking theoretically. You're speaking
Right.
from experience.
Right.
And it is rough, you know, to commit to something, you know, to commit to defending your country or whatever, you know, process that is, and you come back and you find nothing. I mean,
Right.
that's an eerie feeling, on top of all the emotional distress that you have to deal with in reintegrating. So, you know, that's amazing. The dog, the
Yeah,
service dog.
it's
I
my
know a
favorite
lot
right
of
now.
people, a lot of people, you know, frown upon, you know, having them within establishments or what have you. But talk to us about that.
yeah. So
I'd
this.
love to take my Coco anywhere I want, but I don't think that applies to me. But go ahead.
So we have a number of examples across the country the last few months where veterans are taking service dogs into, you name it, pick a business. And they have these service dogs to help them deal with the effects of post-traumatic stress. I don't say PTSD, I don't call it disorder. Post-traumatic stress or a traumatic brain injury. And we need to understand the wounds of war have changed,
Right.
again, since Vietnam, World War II. Back then, you know, you could lose a leg, a limb, it'd be life-threatening, you may die. We've advanced medically so far since then. So many more people are living who would have otherwise have been killed in combat in decades past. And so the service dogs, you talked about it already, they give somebody that sense of purpose. I've got this animal I need to take care of. I've got this companion I can take with me out into the real world. It helps calm them down.
Connectivity.
And you have so many examples. The Redford Veterans Court in Redford Township, dogs who will fly with veterans on planes. The dogs are so trained through that sense of smell that they have. They can detect when the brain is secreting chemicals to say that I'm going through a pang of nervousness or frustration, or I'm getting upset. The dog will come over, lay its head on your lap.
Sure.
You start loving on the dog, and it's scientifically
Calms you down.
proven to de-stress you.
Absolutely.
So these veterans are going into businesses, and the folks are looking at them and saying, well, you've got all 4 limbs. You can see, you can hear, so you must be faking it. You don't really need that dog. So they asked him to leave. And so this put me at a very interesting crossroad, and it kind of speaks to, I guess, my legislative approach on the whole. I could have gone to the news. I could have put out a press release. I could have blasted these business owners. But what would have that accomplished? You know, and I truly don't believe that they are being malicious. You know, when it comes to these guys, there's a need for
It's
education.
a lack of information.
Bingo.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing: if you get a guy going into Starbucks, he's getting kicked out. Do I want to fine Starbucks? Do I want to make an example out of Starbucks because some 17-year-old high school student just didn't know? And so
Common sense.
Right. So we pulled together everybody. We pulled together the business community, the chambers of commerce, both locally and at the state level, the restaurant association, the retailers association, all of the veterans organizations, and we said, here's a problem. We need a solution. Let's figure it out. And we figured it out. And so we came up with a 4-bill package dealing with veterans, their service dogs, protecting them, giving them the same legal rights as anybody else, what the vest looks like, what the identification card looks like, the whole 9 yards. This 4-bill package, 2 House bills, 2 Senate bills, they've both passed their respective chambers. This Thursday, they're both going to pass their respective other chambers, and then it'll be on to Governor Snyder for his signature. So a good example of what we can accomplish when we put the partisanship aside, when you pull people together, again, building coalitions,
Yes.
the same things I tried to do when I was in the Middle East, I'm trying to do here in Lansing. And you have success that you can point to. And I think, truthfully, for a minority member of the Senate, you know, in the Senate, there's 11 Democrats like myself. There's 27 Republicans.
You have your work cut out.
To be able to work
Come in
across the
on
aisle
common ground.
to build that trust, right, and to try and move legislation that's meaningful. It's no small feat, but again,
no, absolutely
you put the time, the effort, and the work into it, and it pays off.
And the common sense.
And the common sense.
And when you appeal to people's sense of humanity and sense of common sense, you get things more done rather than thinking of it on a political level. So that's a wonderful thing, and I think people need to be cognizant about the fact that wounds are not just physical.
That's right.
And especially the tours in Iraq. I mean, devastating.
The other thing that I think is so exciting about that legislation, it doesn't get as much attention as a veterans piece. Right now the law, if you were to look at it, it says the service dogs are authorized for people who are hard of hearing or people who are blind. And so what we did is we added a definition to say a veteran who suffers from one of the following conditions: post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, or any other service-connected disability. We also added a fourth definition that's authorizing anybody who suffers from a different ability as recognized by the ADA. It protects them who's going to have those service dogs as well. So individuals who have autism, Asperger's, anything along the spectrum, any disability that you have in this country, you're now going to be protected in the state of Michigan if you're choosing to use a service dog and to bring it around with you in your daily lives. And so for me, that's a really, really exciting piece to be able to, to be an advocate for the differently abled community, but then to also be an advocate for the veterans community, and to have sort of a beautiful symbiotic kind of relationship between the two on this legislation. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. And there's so many studies too. They actually take dogs into senior citizen homes and to hospitals, and it lowers people's blood pressure and calms them down, and creates more of a stable their vital signs are more stable. And I know with my dog, I mean, I'll just be stressed. He'll just come sit next to me.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like,
they know.
I'm
The animals know.
Absolutely.
They really do.
Absolutely. Lansing, Republicans, Democrats, all this whole process. What is your experience? Do you sense more of a bipartisan conversation out there, or is it still, as we have the perception of the public, sort of the tug of war kind of thing? What is your experience within the time you've been there?
That's a good question, actually. I'm always striving for the bipartisanship. I am a Democrat. Those are a majority of the political principles that I adhere to and align with. But other folks who grew up in different parts of this state or who have a different upbringing than me
have a different vision.
Yeah, I need to understand that. I need to respect that, and I want to try and work with them to get things done. And so it really is issue by issue. And the thing that I think is so unfortunate, the media doesn't do us any favors, right? Now I'm not talking, us here in Dearborn Heights, because it's a community conversation. It's good. 95% of what gets passed in Lansing is overwhelmingly bipartisan. And not a little bipartisan, overwhelmingly bipartisan. But it's always those 2 or 3 big issues that get all the attention, that make us look like we're so divided and constantly fighting. And sometimes that truthfully is the case. The roads is a great debate, right now, where we just cannot seem to get individuals to come to the table to agree on what a solution is or is not.
On having good roads where we don't have any, bumps in the road or potholes. We can't agree on that.
So I think we can agree on we don't want it. But the question is, how do we get there? And we've got a number of individuals in the legislature who have signed pledges to never, ever have a conversation about a tax increase. So they're immediately off the table for having any conversations. We have people who are morally opposed to fee increase. I mean, you name it, or moving these dollars or what have you. And so you come to find, no matter what answer you put on the table, there's 20 or 30 or 40 different people that fall off in every single scenario. Who aren't going to be willing to support.
More so politically motivated than common.
Absolutely
than
politically,
driven by common
absolutely
sense.
Politically motivated. My thing, whether it's a millage or a fee increase or a tax increase, whatever it is, my experience has been, having grown up in Dearborn Heights for the last 29 years, and have served in this capacity for 3 years now. When you go to residents, and if you say, this is the money that we need, and this is why we need it, and we're going to spend it in that way and no way else, overwhelming support, from the community.
Absolutely.
It's when the legislature is disingenuous about how they're going to spend your money, that's when we lose the trust, and we lose the support of the community. And that's when legislators have to run back into their partisan sort of caves, if you will, and start beating the partisan drum to keep the base happy. And so I'll give you an example. The increases that were just passed out of the Senate, and I voted against the 15 cents gas tax increase in the Senate. Let me back it up. So they take this 15 cents and they break it down into 3 different increases. First, it's a 4 cents increase in October. Then it's a 4 cents increase in January. Then it's a 7 cents increase the following January. And everybody says, 15 cents, okay, we get it, we need the 15 cents. The first 4 cents goes to roads. There's a formula, it goes through the funding formula, it gets distributed to everybody. The second 4 cents goes to roads, goes through the formula, it gets distributed to everybody. That last 7 cents, surprise, surprise, it doesn't go to roads. It goes into what is being called a 50-year lockbox. And it's this fund that is closed up, can't be opened unless a joint resolution of the House and Senate is passed to open up that box, and then the money can be spent however the members of the majority party want to spend it. And so what happens with that is it becomes a slush fund essentially for road projects in the majority members' districts. If you're going to go to residents and say we need a 15 cents gas tax increase, be sincere and be genuine and have it all go to roads.
What they're voting for.
You know, and so that is why residents get upset, and that is why, you know, I can't support something that is being misleading or is not all going to roads. If we're saying we need 15 cents, why are we only giving 8 cents to that conversation? So we have a huge fight in Lansing on that.
We only have a few more minutes, but I really do want to talk a little bit about what's going on in Lansing in regards to the 2 representatives who have made huge news. What is going on with that? I mean, it's not...
Sure. So not just huge news, international news. I had friends from Great Britain contact me the other day.
And the cover-up, I think that made it worse.
That's the problem, right? So I'll be the first to say, you know, I am somebody who believes your private life is your private life. I really don't have any interest in what you're doing in your private lives. And so there's really 2 things that make the story so salacious, if you will. We have 2 representatives, Todd Corser and Cindy Gamrat. One's from Lapeer, one's from Allegan County. These are the farthest right Tea Party conservatives you could find. Constantly preaching morality, how you should live your life, constantly shoving it down our throats. And again, I'm going to live my life morally. I'm going to live my life.
They don't believe to each his own.
That's right. They have to force it upon you. And so constantly driving home, you know, about marriage or faithfulness and the whole 9 yards, and it comes out Fridays ago that these 2 individuals are having an affair with one another. And so Cindy is married with 3 children, Todd is married with 4 children, and they're cheating on their spouses with these other folks. So from a moral perspective, incredibly hypocritical, constantly telling us how to live our lives with morality.
And you're right in the middle of everything they're
violating
they
everything. So that's problem number 1. And again, I don't think that has a legislative concern to it. Certainly hypocritical, not my business. The piece that's concerning is that they have found through audio recordings and an investigation that's going right now, the potential for these 2 individuals having used state resources to cover up their affair with one another, to direct their staff. Huge issue. Directing their staffers to cover this up on state time, using state resources. Both of them have come out recently and said they're not going to resign. I'm of the opinion that if the business office investigation proves that they've used state resources to cover up this affair on state time, they need to step down. And if they don't step down, the Michigan House needs to take action to remove them from office. And we've had a number of people from their own party who have called for that already. It's just a matter of seeing what comes out in the next few days.
And I also think, you know, the cover-up and trying to have one of the aides, you know, send out this email to divert. So, you know what? I guess they showed their true colors.
Absolutely.
And the morality issue is not something that's on their table. And people have to stop preaching that. I do believe it's to each their own. And that's what our country is all about. And I believe common sense is in Lansing. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Senator David Knezek on Community Connection, thank you so much for being with us. Stan, Bob, Angela, thank you as well. And we'll see you next time.